welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
And my name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. Normally, we like to start off every episode talking about what's on our minds, which is usually the media we've been watching or reading that week, and then we like to move into a full review for a film. But since last week we didn't have an episode at all, we're pretty much going to do just a full-length episode What's on Our Mind segment. So no main review this week. Everything should be spoiler-free unless we tell you otherwise. So it should be a full conversation.
Yeah, and don't forget that every month we review a film from the Criterion Collection, which is voted on by you, the listeners. So go check out last month's episode on Tokyo Story, and look for our next episode on Mulholland Drive, which should be coming out very, very soon.
Yeah, and by the way, next week we will be putting out our Best of 2018 list. So
Exciting.
We each are going to go over our top 5 movies of the year.
I thought we were doing top 10.
Are we doing a full 10 in the episode?
I believe so.
Yeah, each of us top 10. That's what we talked about.
Oh my.
Even better.
It's going to be
Oh
long.
my. I've only given thought really to the first 5.
We got a
good
week.
thing you have a whole week, yeah.
Oh man. Pressure's on. Now I really do need to watch some more movies before next week. I was thinking nothing's going to dethrone my top 5.
Yeah, whoops, you just got a lot more homework.
I know. Damn it. Mulholland Drive might take a little longer, everyone.
Okay, so if you want to send us your best of 2018 list, we would be happy to read them. You can send them to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And of course, as always, please don't forget to go onto iTunes if you like the show. Give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. And also, be sure to subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use if you haven't already.
Yeah, please do. And a review would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Totally.
Totes.
Before we jump in, I just wanted to say Happy New Year's, guys.
Happy New Year.
Accomplished a full year
Yay.
of podcasting, so I'm
That's
excited.
awesome.
I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to a brand new 2019 full of great movies with you guys
Yeah.
and the listeners.
Yeah, just sidebar real quick. Because of this podcast, I have seen more exceptional movies in the last year than like the last 3 years put together.
Agreed.
Oh, God, me too. I would even maybe say like 8 years for me.
Yeah, I was going through my Letterboxd profile and like my diary, my movie diary, not my literal diary, my Letterboxd diary, over the past like year, which is like where I log everything I watch. And it's a lot more eventful this year than it has been previously. Like usually like, if you look at like the overview of my years, everything is crammed into like December and November and January, like, cause that's when all the good movies come out, you know?
Right.
So anyways, it feels good, feels accomplished, even though I guess technically I haven't accomplished anything, but it feels good.
Well, and it's worth noting too that we did start the podcast a little over a year ago, but I think we're almost like a year to the day of Mike's first like episode where he guested on the podcast and then soon after became a permanent member. So the podcast in its current form, like we're basically at the year anniversary of it. So
Yeah, absolutely. We weren't whole until Mike joined us, so
Oh, gee.
yeah.
Yeah, so if you guys ever subscribe to the show and go back to those like first episodes, they won't sound like this.
No.
no, it'll just be 2 people.
They'll sound 33% different.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works.
Good math. Good math.
Thank you. All right.
Cool.
Are we ready to move into our very long What's on Our Mind segment so we can talk about everything we've been watching over the past couple weeks?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Let's do it. So, who wants to go first?
I will go first because I'm just excited to talk about the first movie that I have on my list. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Awesome. So the first movie that I want to talk about is something that you guys covered on the episode when I was out of town on my New York trip, and that is Alfonso Cuarón's Roma.
Oh, boy.
Obviously, I didn't get to see it the week that you guys did because I was in New York. I missed it in theaters, so I waited until it came out on Netflix. And yeah, then I was finally able to watch it. And I've been anticipating this movie for a long time. Alfonso Cuarón is one of the directors who got me into film in the first place with Children of Men. So I'm basically always going to watch whatever he puts out.
He's a big deal to you and me and anyone who has good taste in movies.
Yeah, a huge deal. So I was very excited about this movie, especially because it seemed to be a step back towards not so much things like Children of Men, but like the level of movie that Children of Men was, like in terms of being a little bit more indie, and things like Y Tu Mamá También, which are my favorite of his films as opposed to like Gravity.
Sure, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, so I really loved Roma in the end, and
Yay!
I was a little worried that it was gonna build up in my head a little too much, waiting for it for so long and not being able to see it in theaters, and
that was my worry too. Yeah,
absolutely.
Hearing all the praise for it since everyone got to see it before me, and it didn't, it did live up to my expectations. Right, it was very, very good. I think it's somewhere between Fellini, who's one of my favorite directors, specifically Amarcord, and Italian neorealism, which is one of my favorite film movements, which would be a film like The Bicycle Thieves. It kind of existed in an interesting middle ground between those, of like being sort of like this memory, but also being very grounded and very like unflinching and real in its look.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say, just in my own spin on what you just said, it reminds me more of Fellini meets Bergman.
Sure. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, totally. Also, I think you guys talked about this a lot on your episode, but the film absolutely looks beautiful. The black and white is like gorgeous from start to finish. The way it was shot is like so intentional with the camera movements and the camera placement that like you just feel like you're in like the hands of an expert filmmaker every second and every frame of the movie, and I just love that. Yeah, and then I think other things worth mentioning. I think that the first-time actor Yalitza Aparicio, hope I'm pronouncing that right.
You did better than I did on my first try.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's really good in this. And then just to talk about the film a little bit, again, we're being spoiler-free, but I think this movie has like one of the most gripping and emotional sequences of scenes in any 2018 film. Like, I think this might not end up being like my favorite movie of 2018, but like as far as like a sequence, like it's probably the one that'll stick with me the most out of any other film in 2018.
I think there's a couple for me, because as I'm thinking about it, I don't know which specific sequence you're talking about. Like there's one near the end, and then there's one near like 2/3 of the way through. Both of which I find to be technically beautiful and emotionally exhausting to watch.
Both of those are so technically hard to pull off, too. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I'll say that it involves shopping.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah. So that scene and everything that happens after it, like, it just
beautiful.
Tore me apart, made me feel more than I felt from any other film. So like just that scene alone was like, worth the whole movie, even though the rest of it is very good. And the one thing that I do find interesting too is that you can walk away thinking a couple of different things about the movie, which I didn't necessarily realize because I didn't listen to our episode on it, the one that I wasn't part of, until after I'd seen the movie, because I didn't want to spoil anything or really know much about the movie.
Right.
Smart.
But when I went back and listened to it, like you guys pulled some like very different emotions and very different things away from the film than I did.
Nice.
Which I found very interesting. And I can't talk about those too much because it would get into spoilers, but basically some of the ways that you guys felt by the time the movie was over, I felt the opposite of. So I think it's a film that can be interpreted different ways depending on what you know.
Which really is a sign of a...
No, go ahead.
I find that to be a sign of a great movie. People can walk away and have completely different readings of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's it. That's my thoughts on Roma. Like it just floored me. I'm sure seeing it in a theater would have been awesome.
The sound was amazing in that scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I remember very specifically during that scene, I was just like, holy moly, in the theater. Because the sound design is just so good. I even think we mentioned it specifically on that episode for that scene as well.
Yeah, thinking people were talking during the movie because it's happening behind you.
Yeah. There's also that too.
That's right. You guys did mention that. So you had mentioned, Mike, to me that I should watch it with good sound. So what I did is I watched it with headphones.
Oh, that's smart.
And turned my volume all the way up. Like I didn't throttle it down at all, like just to have it like full blast and get the full experience. And there were a couple of times where I took off my headphones to be like, is someone talking like outside of my apartment?
Shut up, somebody! I'm not watching a movie in here.
So it's funny was listening to that I had the same experience at home with headphones that you guys did in theaters.
Yeah, I did see an article. There may be a chance that we get to see it again in the theater. I would absolutely go do it. That Netflix was going to show it in some IMAX theaters, so there is a potential. So keep an eye out wherever you are, especially if you're in a big metropolitan area. There might still be an opportunity to see it in the theater, and I absolutely recommend you do it, especially in IMAX because it was shot for IMAX. So.
Yeah. I think it's probably the biggest you can see it. The more you'll appreciate like the shot composition and everything going on in the frame.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on Roma. It's a great film. Highly recommend it.
Do you think it'll crack your top movies of the year?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
You'll hear more about this movie next week.
That makes me so happy to hear. I was wondering what you would think of it. Awesome. Yeah. Good. All right. So, Chris, what have you been up to?
Yeah. So this last week, my mother and my sister came to visit. My sister lives in Cambodia, so she doesn't visit very often. And so we spent the week kind of just watching movies and hanging out. And I had a great time. And one of the movies we watched was on Christmas Eve, and it was called The Santa Chronicles.
Oh, man. I saw this.
Yeah. It was fine for what we were going for, which is just a goofy Christmas Eve movie.
Yeah.
But in no way does that make this movie good.
Well, it's like a Hallmark movie that got the budget for Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
And Kurt Russell really can't save the film. There is a crazy...
Man, but he does a lot to make it more enjoyable.
He does. I think if you cast somebody else, it would have been a lot worse. But
yes.
There's a crazy jailhouse musical number in the middle of this movie that's kind of fun and kind of confusing.
Yeah, Kurt Russell sings.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Elvis, I think. But yeah. So yeah, I'm not a giant fan of this movie. It did what I wanted it to do. We had a good time. My mother and my sister both enjoyed it, and we had a good time. But ultimately, I'm going to stick to the classics next year, I think. Stick to something, like Christmas Story or something like that for New Year's or Christmas Eve.
I think the circumstances under which you watched this film are the perfect ones to enjoy it, right? Like, if you have little kids or old people around, this is the perfect like family event movie, right? Everyone loves Kurt Russell. He can bring together families.
He brought my family together.
You just have like a happy-go-lucky nonsense Christmas movie. Like I said, slightly above that of Hallmark, right?
Yeah.
But did you guys watch any Hallmark movies over the break? I had to because I was around my grandma and my girlfriend, and they both love them.
While visiting my hometown and my girlfriend's house, there were some Hallmark movies going on, but I didn't really watch them, but I saw a few scenes, so I got the idea.
Yeah, my sister.
I saw one with the guy from John Tucker Must Die. John Tucker, whatever that guy's name is.
Oddly enough, is actually his name in real life.
Yeah.
You see a lot of them with former Full House cast members on it.
Yes.
Tell you that much.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so a fun movie, or fun time is what I would say, was had, but I don't know that I'd recommend it. Like, if we had to watch it for the podcast, it would be rough. But yeah, that was my first movie. And Mike, what's on your mind?
Okay, so this week, or actually I should say last week, there were a lot of movies hitting theaters. I didn't really get to catch all of them. It was like Bumblebee, Mary Poppins, and Aquaman. So I could only really find the time to do one movie with my AMC pass, and that was Aquaman. And have either of you guys seen this movie yet?
I have. I actually watched it shortly before we recorded.
Oh, nice. I have not. But I'm completely taken aback by all the reviews and the good word of mouth on this movie. That and Bumblebee. I'm very surprised that either one of those is getting the reception as it does.
I almost watched Bumblebee, but at this point, even if it's good, I kind of just want this franchise to fail. You know what I mean? So I don't really want to support it.
Right. Makes sense, yeah.
I bear too much ill will. I haven't liked a single one of them since 2007.
I've never liked a Transformers
movie. Yeah, exactly. Movie. Not once have I enjoyed even the first one. So really, I'm done with it. So anyway, back to Aquaman. So I really wanted to like this movie. It's a movie that I want to admire, I should say at least. Sometimes I like James Wan pretty well. He's kind of hit or miss. He's very good at genre stuff. Aquaman also goes for some pretty crazy stuff, right? It has people riding sea creatures and crazy monsters. There are some competent to downright impressive action scenes in this movie. But ultimately, I don't even think Jason Momoa's charisma can make me care about Aquaman.
Oh, yeah.
You know
that
what
was
I mean?
my big problem with the movie was caring.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's better than a lot of Marvel's first movies. Like, I would rather watch Aquaman again than Thor 1. And if this movie had come out 4 years ago, I'd probably be a lot more dazzled by a lot of the stuff that's good in it. But right now, it just feels kind of standard. Like, almost like Warner Brothers finally figured out, like, the basic template for a superhero movie, like 5 or 6 movies into the franchise.
Yeah. Well, it's like they, if I may, I don't think this is too spoilery, but it's like they watched Black Panther and I was like, okay, I see how we do this.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? Wonder Woman notwithstanding, I think Wonder Woman's a better DC EU movie than Aquaman. But that said, I think Aquaman is a step in the right direction, right? Like, it's way more fun to watch than, I don't know, Justice League or Batman versus Superman, I think.
It's not nearly as excruciating as Justice League was. That's, at the very least, it's that.
Yeah, it's breezy. I'll put it that way. And the stuff that it does right, I kind of enjoy. Like I said, it goes for some pretty bonkers, bold stuff, you know, and like in the silliness, it really leans into it. And I appreciate this movie being self-aware. I guess I could put it that way.
I have a question for you guys. Since I haven't seen it, I saw a review on Letterboxd from David Ehrlich. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's like a pretty famous movie reviewer. Yeah. And he saw it and he said, I didn't know whether to give this 1 star or 5 stars. And so he ended up giving it 3 stars. And
that makes sense. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's better than Venom. Like, when you watch Venom, I think, Chris, you and I watched Venom and we were kind of like, well, I mean, it's enjoyable even though it's bad by all definition of the word. Aquaman is better and closer towards being a good movie than Venom.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I think little kids will absolutely go bonkers for this movie.
Yeah, I think that's where it'll be most successful.
Yeah. It's a globe-trotting adventure. You know what I mean? Like, there are elements of Indiana Jones in this. There are elements of, like, Uncharted, like the video game series. There are elements of, like, Clash of the Titans, like bonkers, goofy mythology stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. And there's also some really, really visually striking shots and sequences in this movie. So, all in all, I say watch it if you're into superhero movies, but if you're only casually into them, this movie is definitely not going to hold your interest.
Yeah, and if you straight up don't like them, then, like, you're not going to like this one. Like, it's not going to change your mind to, you know, be, like, the exception to the rule.
Right, but that said, if you like Marvel movies, but for some reason, like, you just hate all DC movies so far, I say watch this one because it's definitely a step in the right direction towards being lighthearted and more enjoyable. And that's the strongest praise I can give it, I think, is, like, it seems like Warner Brothers finally has, like, a direction that they can stick with and be proud of.
Yeah, I think what I'll agree with is that the humor seems more at home in this movie than it does in the previous DC movies, because it seemed a bit more shoehorned in the other ones, particularly Justice League. Like, a lot of the humor felt very forced. I
think Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck aren't very funny.
Yeah, and I feel like they can't have been cast to have been funny.
No, I don't think they were. Jason Momoa can be funny. He just seems like a guy who's having a blast. Like, a guy who's psyched he's in a movie.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And there are things that he does where you wonder if, like, was that in the script or is that just Jason Momoa being Jason Momoa?
Yeah, just being a big bro.
Like, some of it just feels a lot more natural. And it didn't always work for me.
No, not me either. But if I liked his personality and I was a little kid, I could see it be very charming.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem for me, as I said before, is like caring. And I just want to say what I think they're missing. And I had this problem. And it's interesting that you brought up the first Thor movie, Mike, is that I had this problem with both the first Thor movie and this film, is that I don't think they do enough to make me relate to Aquaman or any of the, I don't know what they're called, Aqua people. Characters. Atlanteans, thank you. There wasn't much like human element about them that made me care, right? Like, it's all about, you know, being royalty or like
destiny
wanting the throne and like starting a war or preventing a war, and these very large stakes that it didn't have much like to get me invested in them, like, and have something I can relate to.
Right. And just since we're comparing it to other movies, I'll say compared to a more successful movie that's kind of like this, which would be Black Panther. It's like a story about a king that needs to claim his rightful throne. But I cared about T'Challa, the character in Black Panther, because we had a love interest, we had a sister, we had a mother, we had a father that he was grieving over, you know? So all of those things helped. And I think Aquaman tries to do a little bit of that with some mom and dad stuff, but that's pretty par of the course for all superhero movies.
Yeah.
I agree we need a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I think the film is missing, and would have made it more enjoyable.
Yeah, that said, it's already too long, and I don't want any more runtime added onto it.
I would lose an entire villain if I were to be honest, like a villain plot line, which would cut out some action sequences and
I agree,
stuff that we could.
Man,
fit
some
in
of those
all
action sequences were the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, Aquaman, see it or don't. We don't really care.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So is that it for Aquaman?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Cool. Well, then I will. I guess I'm back up now, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
What you got next?
So next up is a film that I've been wanting to watch for a while now. I'd heard about it. I don't even know where I read about it, but is a documentary that is kind of about skateboarding, which is a thing I'm interested in, and then also just like following some real life subjects who are into skateboarding, and that already is like a premise that I'm super into. And the film is called Minding the Gap. I had also seen it pop up on a lot of like best documentaries of 2018 lists and some like best films of 2018.
Yeah, I keep hearing about it.
I want to say maybe I even saw it. Did you guys see Obama's top movies of 2018 list? I feel like it was on there too.
I believe you're right.
So if Obama liked it, I figured I had to check it out.
Thanks, Obama.
Yeah. But anyway, so this film is shot and directed by a guy named Bing Liu, who is also one of the subjects of the film. And then the film follows 3 different people, and they were all friends through skateboarding. And the movie explores the pasts of each person and how that affects their lives and who they are now. And then also like kind of talks about like how skateboarding fits into that, or how skateboarding has been a part of their life and what it's done for them, which kind of makes it sound like it's fully focused on skateboarding, but it's definitely more focused on the characters and their lives and who they are and what their past has been than skateboarding. Just to cut straight to the chase, like I absolutely loved this documentary. Like I thought it was super interesting, very emotional. Like I got moved to tears several times in it. You know, it kind of fits in with things I've talked about before, like films that I like that are slices of life, because there's nothing melodramatic about this documentary. There's no like extraordinary topic that they're covering that like hooks you, right? Like it's just get to know these characters, get to know their past, get to know who they are, what makes them tick, and watch them skateboard some as well. And and you know, similar to Roma, I didn't mention this specifically a minute ago, but you guys mentioned this a lot on the episode, was that like that film makes you feel a lot of empathy and makes you like gain empathy towards characters you might not otherwise. And the thing that I loved about this doc was the amount of empathy that it made me feel for all the characters. Like it's one of the films that make you think about the fact that like every person that you know and every person that you see like on the road when you're in traffic or like at the grocery store that you don't know, like every person in the world is like as important and complicated as you, right? And everybody has their own story and feelings, and like getting to know new people in this way, in the way that this documentary lets you get to know them, is just, it's really awesome. And all of the subjects are like very open to the camera. Like I'm surprised that they are as open as they are, and how they don't seem to like protect themselves from being on camera, if that makes sense, you know? Like
wasn't the director good friends with him though? So that's kind of how he got that access. I
think so, yeah. And so that's one of the things that works about it, is like it doesn't seem like a glossy version of these people's lives at all. It's very raw.
Does this movie... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, does this movie takes place over a very long time, like kind of similar to like a documentary version of Boyhood, correct?
Yes, yeah. It doesn't really, that I remember, give you a specific sense of how much time it covers, but it is at least a few years.
Okay.
But there is footage in it from like when they were a lot younger and were hanging out too, as well as like current stuff. There's like one of the characters is like having a kid, like when the doc starts, and then like later on you can see like kind of gauge how old the kid is, which I'm not very good at. I feel like if you are around kids enough, right, you could look at it and be like, well, that kid's clearly 3, so this documentary covers like 4 years, right? But anyway, so the director, what I found really interesting is that he was willing to go into some very uncomfortable subject matters and like conversations with these characters, and like didn't really hold back, which I found kind of brave on his point in some instances. And there is one scene that I just want to mention because it's one of the more emotional moments in films that I've had in 2018. alongside the scene we talked about earlier from Roma. And Bing Liu, the director, sits down and interviews his mom about his former stepfather and the child abuse that he experienced at the hands of the stepfather. Oh, and he's asking her very straightforward, like not in an angry way, just having like a discussion with her about that. And like, did you know it was happening? Did it ever happen to you? And like, why didn't you want to do anything about it for so long? Right. And like, it is emotional and like wrecked me.
Jeez, that sounds.
And you have a camera on each one of them as they're talking. And it's just like, it's the one thing I can't stop thinking about from the documentary in terms of like a specific scene. It's moving.
Jeez, that sounds a lot heavier than a skateboarding documentary I would have assumed would go. Yeah,
it is. That's, I thought it was just a bit more of a skateboarding documentary, but it goes into some interesting places. I guess in some ways, have you guys seen Hoop Dreams?
I have not.
No, but I know what it is.
Yeah, it reminded me of a bit more of a doc like Hoop Dreams, where like it starts out, you're watching it, it's like this basketball documentary where these people are trying to get into professional basketball careers, but it ends up being a lot more about them as people and getting to know them and their journey. It's really great. I highly, highly recommend it.
Sounds a lot like those Up documentaries.
Yes, that's another thing that's been compared to a lot.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a filmmaker who took a bunch of subjects when I think they started at 7 years old.
Mm-hmm. And
he basically just documents their lives, and as they get older, he makes a documentary like every 7 years. So it was like 7 Up, 14 Up, etc. And into like their middle age, I think. And I've never seen these films, but I've always heard about them being exceptional.
Very interesting for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
How does this pair with mid-90s? Would you consider this a good double feature?
Very well, yeah, because you get the whole skateboarder mentality and like the culture that surrounds skateboarding in a similar way that you do in mid-90s, except that it's all very raw and real.
Okay.
And I mean, to me, it's a much better movie, even though they're different, because one's a documentary and one's narrative. But this film I would recommend over mid-90s if you were just going to watch one. Like, it's a much better movie.
Well, it's on my list now. So
awesome.
Thanks for the more homework, Justin.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's it for Minding the Gap. So I believe, Chris, you're up next.
Yeah. I am really excited to talk about this next, actually 2 movies because I had to catch up. But it's the Paddington series. And these are remarkable movies. I can't believe it's taken me this long to catch up with them. Both movies are just full of heartwarming moments and great action and Chaplin-esque sequences.
I love Chaplin, so
yeah.
You're hooking me right now.
Yeah, the second one is especially good. They don't necessarily have to do as much setting up, so you can kind of just hit the ground running. But it's the main character, Paddington, is just so good and so pure. You just love him. And these are the definition of feel-good movies. And Paddington 2 very likely may find its way onto my top 10 list. It's just so great. And some of the action sequences are actually really amazing. So, yeah, I highly recommend these. Have you guys seen either one?
No. Do I need to watch the first to see the second?
I think the first one is good enough to deserve you watching it, if that makes sense.
The thing is, here's my thing.
Okay.
I'm skeptical that it's actually good enough to merit a top 10 slot, but it's very well received and very well reviewed, so I'm very well aware that I may be wrong. But I don't want to watch 2 Paddington movies before I make the best of the year list.
Yeah,
I don't even really want to watch one.
Well,
but
then,
I hear it's good.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I watched it, was because so many people had talked about how well received it was and how good it was, and it made it onto some people's top 10 lists. I think watching the first one, much like when we talked about Spider-Man in Avengers Infinity War, like when spoilers for Infinity War, I guess, but because we watched Spider-Man the movie, you and me, Mike, that what happens to Spider-Man in Infinity War means more because we had that setup, right? Sure. And I think it's the same thing with Paddington. There's a setup, and what happens in the second one means more because you've seen the first one. But I completely understand the not wanting to watch 2 movies to just get one movie, type of thing. So,
right. And here's the thing: is I'm pretty sure I would enjoy them whenever I actually sit down to watch them. It's just at the end of the year when I'm trying to cram so much in. I want to take a full day dedicated just to Paddington?
Right.
Like a type of movie that probably wouldn't end up being on my top 10, even if I did find it exceptional, you know?
Right. And like I will put out there, once again, everything I watched last week was with my mom and my sister. So I had reason to watch Paddington as opposed to something else.
Good family movies?
Yes. Very good family movies. And just great. The other thing I would say is in Paddington 2, if you don't cry in the last 10 minutes, you need to reevaluate your life. Or not cry, but just like tear up a little bit. It's so great.
Oh, man, I'm sure I would. It's not hard to make me cry in a movie.
No. But yeah, it's really great. I highly recommend them. You don't have to
animated?
Watch. They're live action. Paddington is animated. He's computer, and Paddington's friends but it's really good. I really love them. I can't wait, and I hope for a third one.
Interesting.
Yeah. I wouldn't say necessarily you need to cram it in before our next week, but I would say catch up with it at some point.
No, solid advice. I'm sure you're right.
Yeah, I'm always looking for more like feel good, happy comedy things.
I think that these would be movies that you would really like.
Sweet.
Yeah. On contrary, I never seek those movies out. I just kind of wait for good word of mouth to reach me, and then I'll eventually watch them. But like feel good, like happy type movies like that are just never ones that pop up on my I better put that on my watch list,
Right.
Yeah.
Like I would have never watched this, except for because of exactly what you're saying, Mike. It's not something I seek out, this type of movie anyways, but because of all the word of mouth is why I was like, well, I got to watch this, and then my sister and mom were here and I thought, well, this is the perfect time to do it. So
now or never.
Yeah. So that's Paddington 2, unless there's anything else you guys have on that.
No. Sounds like I should watch it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a movie I need coming off of Roma and Minding the Gap.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I completely get that.
Mike, what is on your mind?
Okay, so Bird Box. I just watched this earlier today. This is, of course, Netflix's most watched movie within the first week ever.
I've had so many people come up to me and ask, have you seen Bird Box? People that I don't even know that I do a podcast on movies, but just tons of people are like, hey, Bird Box is great.
I'm telling you, man, it's a hit. Never underestimate Sandra Bullock, I guess, is the moral of the story here.
People love her.
Yeah, she can make millions of people see crappy movies. Which it feels like The Blind Side all over again.
Ugh.
Right, and I think I saw something, the number was like 47 or 48 million people watch it in the first week.
48 million accounts. Yeah, but we also don't know if that's like a full watch or if they just started it or what,
That's true.
But anyways, in case you haven't determined what I thought, this movie is a mess. The characters are all very one note and the dialogue is very painful to get through at times. This movie starts out with like Sandra Bullock talking a lot to Sarah Paulson's character. And man, those scenes were rough. The dialogue is just so quirky. Everyone's so quirky. Everyone's got like a little witty comment to everything the person just said to them. I don't know. It felt very much like a Lifetime movie to me. John Malkovich, I think, is very over the top here as well, which he tends to do.
Yeah.
But here, not in a charming way. You know what I mean? Has anyone seen this movie besides me?
Yeah, I watched it.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris?
I probably liked it a little bit more than you, but I agree that this is not a great movie. There are some sequences that I enjoyed, particularly the first 15 minutes or so of the movie. Not necessarily the dialogue
Before
part.
You realize what's going on.
Yeah. I love the conceit of the movie. I think it's a great idea. One of the things that I had a problem with is that it doesn't follow its own rules, or I'm not even sure what the rules are necessarily, if that makes sense. I guess everybody's seen it, but there is a moment. So basically the conceit of the movie is when you go outside, you have to be blindfolded because there's some sort of thing that if you see it, it drives you mad and you kill yourself.
Which is more than I knew when I started it.
Yeah.
So you probably spoiled somebody on something.
Well,
just kidding. It's just the basic plot, so I don't
Yeah.
think that counts as a spoiler. But
So what I would say is, so you're running around outside, blindfolded, blind. I would be running into a lot more stuff than she runs into, and
Oh my God.
there are moments where she like runs she's blindfolded and runs right to the thing she's supposed to be running to. And that's a really missed opportunity because you could have had a lot of suspense with that. You know, like, this place is right next to you. You got to go to the right,
Yeah,
you know.
everyone's too good at being blindfolded in this movie.
Yeah.
There's a sequence where 5 people get in a vehicle and they block out every window, the windshield, everything. Like every bit of sunlight they block out with like newspaper so they can't see out. And they're like, okay, we got to drive down the street. And they're like, how are we going to do it? We're blind. And they're like, no, we're not. We have a GPS. And so they back out of the garage and proceed to drive through an abandoned city with God knows what obstacles lying in the middle of the road, using entirely their GPS.
Yeah, I've never seen a GPS quite like that.
Yeah, so this is the level of stupid and careless and lazy we're working with in this movie, right? Like, which is that they can't even properly do like the basic conceit of the movie, right? Like they can't even like the conceit is okay, you have to get around without looking. So let's make that interesting. Like The Quiet Place, a film that this movie very much wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless what you think about that movie, I think A Quiet Place was much better at doing this. Like, you get the idea, like, they go out of their way to be quiet all the time. This is how they're used to living.
Right.
In
and
this
you
movie,
see the rules,
yeah,
like what they've done to adapt to being quiet.
Exactly. Here, it's just a lot of, like, badly acted scenes, unless you're Sandra Bullock. You're acting well. But other than that, it's just a lot of people, like, I don't know, acting badly. The rules feel lazy. I don't know. It's just not a good movie.
I haven't seen it, obviously, but, I mean, to me, it feels like if you're making a movie about having to get around blindfolded, it's like you could almost make a movie of, like, having to get across town for groceries, and that's, like, your movie, because
this movie could have been so much
wrong.
smaller in scope, and with which a much smaller cast and been better. If you give me Sandra Bullock in the woods with 2 kids in a boat and blindfolds, I can watch that for an hour and a half. But if you give me flashbacks to a house and how she got here,
I would say it is based on a book, so I think they followed the book. But and it would be different in the book too, I imagine, since you're reading it as opposed to. But yes,
it certainly wouldn't have been acted badly.
Yeah, it in my head when I read, all the actors are bad.
That's why you hate books.
Yeah, that's why I don't
read. In my
read.
own dramas, no one's acting better than I could.
Yeah. But yes, I agree, Mike. There's not much to recommend in this movie.
It's shot well. I mean, there's some really suspenseful moments. There's one sequence on the boat in particular that I think is very, very nerve-wracking, and Sandra Bullock is so good in it, where they're going through and you just hear this voice of someone out there talking to them, and you don't know where they're at because everyone's blindfolded.
Yeah, it's almost. I would have almost rather them just stay on the river. That would have been interesting.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you give me Sandra Bullock on a boat with 2 kids, and she has to wear a blindfold the whole time. That's a drama, survival drama I want to see. You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you stick Sandra Bullock in there with a bunch of like I don't know.
John Malkovich.
Yeah, with some John Malkovich level overacting. And it just, I don't know, none of it clicked. And it all felt very predictable, and all the tropes, like every character, like, oh, John Malkovich plays like the asshole guy from like, do you ever see the remake of Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's like the asshole who's like, when you're trapped in a tight place with a bunch of people, they all have to have like larger than life personalities, you know?
Yeah. They all fit into certain tropes.
Right, yeah. You have like the jerk
post-apocalyptic.
Rich, yeah, the jerk rich guy who doesn't want to like be a team player, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. Well, I'm going to put it in the skip it list. Not that I actually have one, but
and if you guys like this movie, write the show. Let me know what I'm missing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's all I've got for Bird Box. It's on Netflix now. You've probably heard of it. I don't recommend it, but you know what? Do whatever you want. Justin.
Yeah.
What else do you watch? Hi.
So one of the other things that I watched, and this is going to be switching gears quite a bit from Bird Box, except it is a Netflix original. It is a documentary series called Sunderland Till I Die.
I have not heard of this.
Yeah, I've seen this on the show notes, and I don't know what it is.
So it popped up, I think, on my Netflix thing because I watched some other like soccer documentaries on there. But it is a documentary series that follows a team in England called Sunderland.
That explains why I haven't heard of it.
Yeah. And it's 8 episodes long, like 8 40-ish minute episodes. So it was a pretty breezy watch for me, maybe not for everybody. But so to set up what the documentary is about, basically the way that leagues work in England for soccer is that the bottom 3 teams in each league get relegated to the tier below them, to like the league underneath them. And the top teams get relegated to the league above them. So Sunderland was a team that was in the top tier English league, the Premier League, with teams you've probably heard of like Manchester United. They were playing with them. And this series follows them the season after they were relegated down to the league below them, and follows them into their fight of trying to get back to the top league and get promoted back to the Premier League. And, you know, what makes this different from another one that I talked about, I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 months ago, there was a documentary series on Manchester City, which is a team in the Premier League and one of like the best soccer teams in the world. Like, this doc makes the Manchester City doc look like it was a commercial for Manchester City, because it's all the gloss and it's all about them winning and just being great like the whole time. And this one is about a team who is struggling, because what happens when you get demoted from the Premier League, you lose like your portion of the TV rights, and the Premier League is like the most watched soccer league across the whole world. And there's massive amounts of money to be made just by being in the Premier League, and they lose that. So what this documentary follows is like having to deal with, like, you don't have money to keep your good players. You don't have money to bring in good players to help you get back up. Your staff who are working in like the stadium or working for the club, like, there are massive layoffs because they lose so much funding. Right. And like then the whole town is affected, because all of a sudden you don't have big teams like Manchester United coming, or Manchester City coming to like your club, right? Like it basically deals with like all of the warts and like them trying to like get out of this like sinking boat situation. Like it's like a snowball situation, right? So it's very moving in that sense to me, of like watching these people struggle in a more human way that doesn't fully revolve around like whether or not we're good at soccer, if that makes sense.
No, that actually sounds like a documentary I could be into.
Yeah. And I think I'm biased and like it more than like the average person will, because I like soccer, but I do think it would work for anybody, because it has that human level.
If you really liked soccer, you would call it football.
I know. Well, I don't know how many people listen to us in England, so I say soccer because I imagine the majority of our audience is American-based. Otherwise, I would.
I get it. I just wanted to call you out in case we ever do have any foreign people who are like being super mad at us for you saying soccer over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
No need to write.
So yeah, I highly recommend this one, you know, if you've got the time, and even if you're not a soccer fan, I think I would somewhat recommend it. But if you are at all interested in like sports or soccer and you like that sort of thing, I think you will really like this. I think it's such an unfiltered look.
What about if you're into documentaries? Like, how does it stand as a documentary series? Is it an exceptionally made one, or is it just kind of like good for a sports documentary?
I think it's exceptionally made.
Because that's where I sit. I like documentaries just fine, but care not for a sports team.
Yeah. It's very beautifully shot in terms of like, you know, it does a lot of drone work of like the city as well, and there's a lot of really beautiful shots of that, because there is so much involved in like talking to the city and the townspeople who are, you know, their heart and soul are invested in this club, and to have your club, it's a big part
of their local culture,
go down. It is. It's massive. Like they even deal with like, oh, they don't deal with it, but it's like a 5-minute scene where they're at a funeral home of someone who wanted to be buried in like a full like Sunderland jersey, and like they talk about how they sometimes sell like red and white striped coffins because the team is red and white striped. So like that's how deep this team is like in this town. And so you also have a lot of townspeople struggling too, and like dealing. It's almost like they're having like an existential crisis.
It reminds me a lot of how a lot of local southern towns deal with like high school football.
Yeah,
it's like bleed it.
Exactly. And I will say, if anybody watches this, if either of you guys watch it,
American
just
football is what
warning.
I was talking about, by the way.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I just wanted to make sure it was clear. That's all.
Yeah, cool. But I will say, for fair warning, if you do watch this, the theme song that plays with the intro is not very good. It's my only complaint about it, and like it kind of turned me off. Like the first time I was watching it, when like after the little cold open of the first episode, and it went to the theme song, I was like, oh, I don't like this song.
Good thing Netflix gives you the skip button.
Me. Yeah, and I did skip it, but funny enough, by like the end
bad
of the
taste was still
documentary,
there.
yeah, by the end of like the episodes, by like episode 7 and 8, I found myself listening to the song because it just kind of got ingrained in my head, and like the emotion of the song started to fit more with the series.
Wait,
right? And I was getting like into it a little bit by like the 7th and 8th time, but at first I hated it, and I imagine other people will too. I don't know.
Well, it's like The Sopranos. By season 2, I'm into it, the intro song, but man, for a whole season, I was like, I'm gonna have to watch this every time.
You just get brainwashed.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's it for Sunderland Till I Die. So back to Chris, I believe.
All right. Yeah. So I watched another movie called The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society, which might be my favorite title from 2018.
What a mouthful.
Is it Potato Peel or Potato Peel Pie Society?
Yeah, you have Potato Peel Pie written down.
It is Potato Peel Pie. So that's a lot to say, especially since I didn't say it all. So I watched The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. Good thing I have a pop filter on my mic, is what I have to say. So I did get the IMDb synopsis just so because they can say it better than I can. So in the aftermath of World War II, a writer forms an unexpected bond with the residents of Guernsey Island when she decides to write a book about their experiences during World War II. Yeah, this is a really fun movie. It's directed by Mike Newell. You might know him from Donnie Brasco, and I think he did a Harry Potter movie as well. And it's a solid director. It stars Lily James, who is also in Baby Driver. She looks very different in this movie, but she's very good. And Michael Huisman, I believe is his name, from Game of Thrones and The Haunting of Hill House.
I was about to ask. I was like, yeah. The second Dario.
Yeah, the second Dario, yes, exactly. This is a really fun mystery romance movie. Beautifully shot, great scenery because they're all on the Guernsey Island. The characters are all noble. Even the antagonist is a noble. He just has different ideas of what's supposed to be happening. They're all noble and good. Another feel-good movie. If you can't tell, there's a theme to what I watched last week. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Really fun. I like the period piece that it had immediately after World War II. And yeah, it was a very good movie.
When did this come out?
It came out in 2018. I don't know exactly when, but it did come out last year.
I've not even heard of it at all.
Me neither.
That title would stick with me if I had just seen it somewhere, even in passing.
Yeah. My sister actually had read the book and wanted to watch the movie, so that's how that... Yeah, nerd alert. But I liked it quite a bit.
Where'd you watch it at?
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
Oh,
I actually might give that a shot because that sounds interesting to me.
Yeah,
I like Lily
really
James.
does.
Lily James is good. And there's a mystery that happens that Lily James is trying to figure out, and it's really touching too, I think. And it went to a different place than I expected it to go for a brief moment. But yeah, I think this is a really good movie. It won't crack my top 10 list for sure, but it's a really solid movie, a good sit for sure.
Better than the Santa Chronicles?
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society.
Potato
Peel Pie Society. Man, that pie just keeps getting left out.
Clearly,
Mike.
pie didn't have a very strong element in the plot, or you'd remember it more.
The potato peel did, though. So
Yeah.
no.
Nobody calls American Pie American. It's because the pie played a strong role.
You're right.
What?
Yeah, I'm confused.
It took me a minute to realize what you were saying.
Mike, what have you been watching?
Okay, so the other thing of note that I have watched since last time we had an episode is Burning, which is the South Korean film by Chang Dong-lee. And I have been wanting to see this film since it premiered at Cannes.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Secret Sunshine. I have that on Blu-ray, which was also directed by Chang Dong-lee. This movie is right up my alley. And I am still deciding on where it places on my overall list of the movies of this year, Like, I don't know how far it will rise or where it will settle just yet. I can tell you that I have not been able to stop thinking about it since then. It's been a few days now. It reminded me a lot of some Michelangelo Antonioni films. It's almost like Blow Up meets La Ventura.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly. And if you're a fan of Antonioni, you'll probably know exactly what that means. But I think that accurately describes this movie.
Yeah, I think it does too. And I've seen the film as well. And the other thing that I wanted to throw in, your description is probably better than mine, but I also got a bit of a vibe of French New Wave and Godard with it, in the way that it likes to just take long breaks from like the plot just to live in like a scene or a moment. And there are certain scenes in it that reminded me of like, you know, the dancing scene from Band of Outsiders where the characters just dance for a while for no reason. And or the long apartment scene in Breathless where like we just hang out with the two characters even though they're on the run from the cops. We just stop having them run for like 25 minutes of the movie and hang out in an apartment and talk. And also like the camera movement, like oftentimes like the camera seems to have like a mind of its own and like kind of move and like call attention to itself. And
absolutely,
it's very interesting. Anyway, so just that alongside the Antonioni comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. So and if you guys listening don't know who Michelangelo Antonioni is, but you liked Burning, check out some of his stuff. Criterion Collection has released a lot of Antonioni movies, and they all kind of have this vibe where basically the mystery of the film is trying to parse what's real because your protagonist is an unreliable narrator, right? So overall, it goes for character study more than the actual mystery plot of the film. And that's a very hard thing to pull off because it could easily seem like you're losing point, you don't know what you're doing, you're being pretentious, etc. But, oh my God, this movie it knows exactly what it's doing. It has confidence in itself. Like, there are so many times when I was watching it at the beginning that I was thinking to myself, why are we going here? Why is this happening? This seems, ultimately, I don't see how this is going to be important. But it all is.
Right.
Real quick, I want to kind of see a little bit more about what Justin thought, but I just wanted to say Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead is in this. He played Glenn. In The Walking Dead, not in this.
Yes.
He was really good in this, and I cannot wait to see what he does next in movies. His character is like the perfect cipher. He's charming, yet always blank, never giving you anything to feel.
Yes.
And I talked to my girlfriend after it was over about, okay, now that the movie's over, what do you think even happened? What was the plot of the movie we just watched? And she and I saw the last hour of this movie completely differently. And took completely different things out of it.
Possible.
Yeah, like we're not even sure that the movie was about the same thing. It's so vague and so masterfully vague. and that's funny. All I'll say. But Justin, what do you think? Elaborate a little bit more on your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah. So to build off of what you just said, literally what I have written down in my notes here is that, you know, it is a mystery film and there is a mystery going on.
But the mystery is, like, what is the mystery?
Yes, like the film's a mystery the whole way through, but like it's even a mystery as to what is going on in the film and what is the film about. That's like part of the mystery. Yeah, like I literally have that written, so it's funny that you also say the same thing.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and I wish we could talk a little bit more about it in spoilers, but anyone who's seen it, I think, knows exactly what we're talking about. It's wonderful. Like, there are things that characters do and things they say in passing that don't seem important at the time. But then when it's all said and done, 2 hours later, you're like, well, that clearly changes everything if I think about that line a little bit more, you know?
Right.
It illuminates character motivations or possible character motivations. Yeah, it's a movie that gets endlessly fascinating to dive down the rabbit hole of, like, thinking about afterwards.
Yeah. And I think it's not going to hit you when the movie's over totally. Like, it's going to be one of those things that nags at you and that you keep thinking about.
Yeah. I was in the shower the next morning before I really started thinking about it. And I was like, wait a minute. Did that even happen?
Yeah. It's grown on me significantly since it ended. You know, I find myself thinking back on it regularly and more fondly. Like, I think I watched it 2 days ago.
Yeah, three days for me, maybe.
Yeah, and, you know, it's probably gone up a good half star out of like a, 5-star rating just in 2 days. Yeah. So I feel like it's going to keep going and keep climbing and just get better and better as I think about it. And I think it would get better on a rewatch.
Oh,
even.
Man, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you seen it?
Have you seen it, Chris?
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
Pipe up, man.
Yeah, speak up, man.
I was going to let you guys do your thing. Yeah, I loved this movie. You're right. It's very mysterious. You're not exactly sure what you're watching. What I would say is the first hour it's so beautifully shot that they don't do much in the first hour, but I was enthralled the whole time, right? There's not much plot going on, but it's just so fascinating to watch because it's so beautiful. And it only gets more beautiful from there, right? Yeah, Stephen Yeun is great in this movie. I think all three of the main actors are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Just beautifully shot. I need to watch Secret Sunshine. I think that's my reaction to watching this movie is that I need to go back and watch Secret Sunshine. Yeah,
I have to watch more of this guy's movies, including Secret Sunshine. I have not seen any of his other films, and I feel like that's a massive mistake after watching this movie.
I bought Secret Sunshine and Criterion back probably 2010, 11. That's the only other film I've seen by this director. But man, based on Burning and Secret Sunshine both, I cannot wait to go back and watch this film called Poetry that he did. That's actually been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, I think I was listening to a review of Burning, and they mentioned Poetry and how great it is. So,
yeah, I think up until Burning, I think that was probably his most popular movie.
Yeah. I do want to talk about one particular sequence that Justin brought up in our Slack chat that we talked to each other.
Yeah, so you can steal his sunshine real quick. Not steal his sunshine, steal his thunder.
I'm going to pass it over to Justin and let him
Steal
go.
My Sunshine is a song from the 90s.
I'm going to steal your secret, sunshine.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that's probably why I said that.
Yeah.
I do want to say, too, that this film, in my opinion, has like the best cinematography of any film in 2018. Like it's my choice. I don't know that it'll get nominated in terms of like Oscars, but it's the best looking film of 2018 in my opinion, and also contained one of the best shots, which is what we were going to talk about, Chris, and that is this scene where all three characters are hanging out and they're smoking pot, and the girl gets up to dance, and the camera follows her while she's dancing, and she's silhouetted against like a beautiful sunset, and like the South Korean flag is blowing in like the upper left corner of the frame, and she's doing this dance, and there's this beautiful jazz lounging music playing.
Yes, so great.
While she's doing it, and it's something that we were talking about earlier, where like the film kind of takes this break from plot and stuff, and it's just this long scene of her dancing where the camera's kind of just drifting and moving, and like it's, like I said, the camera sometimes seems to have a mind of its own on what it wants to look at, that is separate from like, I don't know, separate from what you want to see. In
right.
A way.
Well, and there's a certain art to the camera work, right? Where it seems almost like the camera is blowing in the wind.
Yes.
Right?
Floating.
Like it's like a butterfly as the cameraman or something like that, right? Like it's flowing so perfectly, and it's not jerky in any way that you're thinking about. Like, I didn't even think about the actual process of filming that shot until just now whenever you're talking about it. I was just caught up in the shot because it's beautiful. But thinking about it now, it's like that must have been done on a Steadicam. There must have been some guy,
sure,
just moving around. But the artistry in which it's done, and the choreography and the timing, and like her silhouette against the sunset.
And there's only so much time in a day that you can get that shot.
Yeah, and it's
right?
happening right as the sun is going down, so you know the time is limited.
Yeah, based on my experience of like shooting things and
it's not fun.
Dealing with like golden hour and sunset, you've got about 30 minutes max to get that shot, to like looking the way that it does with the sun where it is, and the sunset and like the sky and having the exposure perfect. You've 30 minutes max. So I imagine they had about 2 takes to get it at that time, and that's it. So that, I don't know if they nailed it in 2 takes, had to try in multiple nights. I'm sure they like rehearsed the hell out of it before the light got right and nailed it on 2 takes. But it's impressive.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, agreed. So that is Burning. I think we all recommend it. It is very good. It premiered at Cannes earlier this year, made a big deal, so you probably heard of it.
Yeah. I think which one? What did it win? Did it win the Palme d'Or?
I think
or was that
so.
Shoplifters?
Ooh, crap.
Hold on. It was nominated for Palme d'Or. It won the Vulcan Award, and it won the FIPRESCI prize. And I spell that because it's literally all capitalized on this Wikipedia site.
All right. So cool. The only... Oh, well, not the only, but the other big foreign film that I need to watch this year is Shoplifters. Hopefully I get a chance to do that before next week.
Yeah. Especially after the recommendation from the guest host, JD
Durand from In Session Film.
Yeah, he liked it better than Roma, so I got to watch it.
All right. So, do you want to talk about some of your other stuff, Justin?
Yeah, I've got one more thing to talk about before we wrap up.
Okay.
And that is a film I wanted to talk about this one because I finally watched it, and I know you guys have both seen it, and that film is Sorry to Bother You.
Oh, boy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a movie easily unpacked within a What's on Our Mind segment.
I know, and unfortunately we don't have time to get into it, but maybe another time, maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you could use one word to describe that movie, what would it be? Quick.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mine would be dense.
Yeah, dense is a good word for it. There's a lot going on in it, and there's so much going on that I think the film both like simultaneously exceeded my expectations and didn't live up to my expectations at the same time.
That is a perfect way to describe how I feel about this movie too.
Yeah, because there's just that much in it, right? That like there's so much more than I thought there was going to be, but it just there was something not quite satisfying about some of the elements in it that like that I thought I was going to get going in. What I really like about the film is I love the world that it builds. Like I love the alternate reality. It reminded me of films like Brazil or Joe versus the Volcano.
It reminded me a lot of like Idiocracy too. Something like
I haven't seen that one, but yes.
Yeah, well,
I know.
Yeah.
But that's what like was really working for me in the film. Like the world that it built and the situations that were going on in the world and some of the characters I was very, very interested in. But, you know, by the end of the film, I think some of the messages got kind of muddled for me. It's almost like it's a little too dense to parse, at least on one viewing. And one of the places that the film didn't live up to my expectations was the premise that I thought I was getting with the trailer, because the trailer to me was built around this guy going to a telemarketing thing and being told that he needs to use his white voice because he's a black man. And it seems like that's kind of the plot, like the high concept of the film. And I was a little disappointed because it seemed like it was used to get him to a certain point in the plot. And then for me, I felt that got really dropped off and like wasn't a part of the movie after a certain point. And that was a little disappointing to me. Like it felt poorly structured in that sense to me.
Yeah, well, to me, that didn't bother me so much because I felt like by the time the movie drops that angle, they had pretty much gone as far with that idea as I think they could have. Even at the beginning, whenever it's like it's in there, they never really play it for laughs. You know what I mean? Like the trailer makes you think it's going to be played for laughs a little bit, but it's not really played for laughs. In fact, none of this movie is really played for laughs, even the absurd stuff. At least not in my eyes. I didn't really think it was that funny. But what I say is like the white guy voice thing, I think they took it as far as they could, and then I think the movie just had other stuff on its mind. I agree with you in the sense that I thought that's what the movie was about too, and I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but I would say it's not the movie I thought I was getting whenever I sat down to watch it. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing for me, you know?
Yeah, I think this movie goes to surprising places that are supposed to be surprising, you know, whether it gets dropped, the white voice thing gets dropped or not. But I think by the time you get to the end of this movie, it's a different movie than you thought you were walking into, right?
Yeah, it's like the trailer was sold on like a not important plot element, I guess, or that's like a one-note idea.
I don't know necessarily. I think it was important and they use it very well, the white voice part, and I think...
Right, but like we were saying, this movie's just so dense.
Yeah, there's so much in here.
I think it gets in the way of other things that the movie's about and other thing the movie's trying to say. It was basically because I was focused on that. It's like, that's the premise of the movie or that's the plot, and like it's this big thing at first, and then it just gets in the way by the end because ultimately that doesn't matter to anything the film's, or at least the main things that the film's trying to say to me.
I would say it's hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but I would say I think it ties into the overall themes of the movie, but there are so many, and it's just such a dense movie that I agree with you that the white guy voice is definitely not an important part of the movie. It's an important piece of the satire, but not the end of the not the end of what he's trying to say. I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And so yeah, there's a lot going on in it. I think the film's a bit like going down a rabbit hole, and it just keeps getting like deeper and weirder.
Yes.
Which is an aspect of the film I really enjoyed. Like you said, Chris, it goes to places you don't expect, like going in.
It's interesting that you bring it up.
Something I like.
it's interesting that you bring it up this week because I was just reading that Amazon workers are trying to unionize, or they're making a mad rush to unionize before it's too late, is what I just read like earlier today.
And the place to watch this movie is on Amazon. So.
Yeah.
Irony.
I think on Hulu too, right?
Oh, no, it is on Hulu, I think. Yeah, it is on Hulu. But, yeah.
So I did like a lot of the performances, but particularly I thought Tessa Thompson and Armie Hammer were both great in it.
Yeah.
And fun to watch. Like, I thought Armie Hammer was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I do want to mention, because I remember, I believe you, Chris, specifically when you watched this film way back, you brought up Lakeith Stanfield's performance and him being really good in it. And that's the one place that I really want to disagree. Because I think a big hindrance for me for enjoying the film was that I felt very uninterested by his performance. Like, to me, it felt really bland and like most of the time, to a point where like I was not connecting with him at all. Like, I was way more interested in Tessa Thompson and like the world and other stuff. And like his performance just kind of,
I will agree,
it felt really flat for me.
That Tessa Thompson is endlessly fascinating when you watch her as she acts. But Lakeith Stanfield for me was like I disagree. He was really good, I thought, and was very interesting. What did you think, Mike? Decide what this is.
I come down somewhere in the middle.
Tiebreaker.
I think it's a good performance. I don't know that I was more interested in him than Tessa Thompson. I think his performance is supposed to be understated because he is our surrogate in this over-the-top world, you know?
Right.
So I think it's...
I do think
I think it's just
Tessa Thompson's earrings deserve an award because
oh man, I think my favorite,
they're pretty rad.
My favorite was it shirt or earrings where she's like tell Homeland Security that we're the bomb.
Yeah
I'm
That's
pretty
awesome.
sure it was earrings.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
those
super awesome.
were cool. Like, you know, like I said, a lot of the world and the character building, and like just a world where a character is just wearing earrings like that, like the earrings she wears, and it's treated completely normal. Like, that alone is like kind of alternate reality in a way. And everything that the movie does on that level, I really, really liked. Like, and was just very into and just fully enjoying the ride that the film takes you on. There's just these like minor complaints I have that kept me from like, I want to say like loving the film, because I don't think I quite loved it, but just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel like maybe trying to tackle like 25% less stuff would have made maybe like a more effective movie, but it's almost like Boots Riley. This is his first movie. It's almost like he just had been building the script up for so long that he just like, when he finally came time to make a movie, he's like, I'm putting it all in there.
I may not get another chance.
Yeah, like I'm just, everything's going in.
Yeah.
It's like holding a hose tight and the pressure builds up and you let it go and it just squirts everywhere.
But yeah, it's definitely an angry, like punk rock kind of attitude, and it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's surprising that this movie is more punk rock than the Spike Lee movie, Black Klansman. You know, I feel like this.
Well, I mean, I think that comes from being first-time director. I mean, look at Spike Lee's first movies. You know, they were a lot angry. Oh, that's not true. Black Klansman's pretty angry.
It is, especially at the end.
Yeah,
and maybe I should not compare that, because I think the end is where Black Klansman's punk rock.
I think Spike Lee has gotten less angry as he's gotten older, I feel, and Black Klansman was kind of a return to that. So, but no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people compared them, or at least I've seen them compared. And
do you hear about the little tiff that Spike Lee and Boots Riley got into?
Oh yeah, like on Twitter, or like when
I remember something about it.
Yeah,
something
apparently,
came out,
Boots Riley didn't like Black Klansman because it showed the LAPD, or maybe just police officers in general, as like a positive force towards fighting racism. And Boots Riley didn't take too kindly to that, which obviously I don't want to comment on, but I just
Sure.
Yeah, just wanted to bring it up because it happened.
Sweet. Cool. Well, that's all I have for Sorry to Bother You. Ultimately, I liked it, but I wanted to love it a little bit more, and there are a few things I think could have been better about it. But, you know, like you said, first-time director, first movie, it's still pretty good for that.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see what happens.
Yeah, you could write many a college paper on this movie, so...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so that's pretty much it. You know, I watched a lot of things over the holidays, like just quick highlights. I watched When Harry Met Sally on New Year's Eve yesterday, which reaffirmed how much I love that movie. I think it's so good.
I need to see that movie. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I've seen it before, but not in a very, very, very long time.
It's really good. I think it's one of like the best like rom-coms out there.
Yeah, no, it's like one of the classics, you know?
Yeah,
that started like
definitely.
the resurgence of rom-coms in the 90s.
Yeah, thank goodness, because I love rom-coms.
We need a new rom-com to reignite the rom-com passion. Maybe Crazy Rich Asians will do that. So maybe next year
Yeah,
we'll
I think
start
we
getting
got
some.
that.
Yeah, that was another thing. I also rewatched Crazy Rich Asians with my girlfriend.
nice.
She hadn't seen it. She didn't go with me when I saw it for
Did
the
she like it?
podcast. She loved it. She thought it was great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
maybe you're right. Maybe it will.
And we're getting
then-
2 more of those.
Yeah, and then the other thing I watched last night after watching When Harry Met Sally, we were scrolling through Netflix, my girlfriend and I, and we
Ooh, I
came
see the
across
notes here.
we came across National Lampoon's Van Wilder, which she loves Ryan Reynolds. I like Ryan Reynolds. We talk about how handsome he is regularly, and I was like, "Have you ever seen Van Wilder?" This was like the first movie that Ryan Reynolds was in that I remember, and like for a long time, at least like several years when he was in films, I was like, "Oh, it's Van Wilder. He's in a movie."
Yeah.
Like this is the film that put him on the radar and put him on the map, I guess. But I rewatched it. Go ahead, Chris. What are you gonna say?
I think you're forgetting 2 Guys, a Girl, in a Pizza Place.
I'm not, but I said movie. I think,
Oh.
and that is
Well.
a TV show.
I stand corrected.
But anyways, I actually still think this film is pretty good. Like, is it great? No. But is it funny? Sure. And there's a great performance from Ryan Reynolds. You can watch it and tell that he's like head and shoulders above everybody else other than Cal Penn, who's in the movie. Like, and you can just see that he's going to be the star that he becomes. And it's so clear watching that movie because it is pretty low budget. It was a National Lampoon movie. But, if you like films like American Pie and that sort of like raunchy late 90s, early 2000s sex comedy, then like I think this film holds up. It made me laugh more than I thought. Like it's funnier than I thought it was going to be.
I don't know. I'm skeptical on this one because the last time I watched it when I was in ninth grade, I didn't like it then. So I can't. I'm remembering like jokes about a dog having big balls,
which ends up being germane to the plot and things that happen in it.
I know, but not in a good, fun way, like a gross, stupid way.
Yeah. Anyways, okay. So I don't want to talk about Van Wilder too long, but like it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like I was skeptical as well. And then the last thing, just to quickly mention, I read Roger Ebert's Life Itself book, which is his memoirs, which for any movie fan, it wasn't the book for the movie fan that I thought it was going to be. I thought he'd talk a lot more about movies and like reviewing them and different things. It's a bit more all about his life. But so if you like Roger Ebert as a person and like his writing, I highly recommend reading it. It's very interesting. There are some things for like movie lovers in it where he talks about his relationships that he had, because he had pretty good relationships with Martin Scorsese and Robert Altman, and he interviewed Ingmar Bergman a lot. So he talks about, there's chapters like talking about those people specifically that were really interesting as a movie lover. But overall, it was very interesting to read about this guy's life.
Yeah, I miss Roger Ebert every day.
Me too.
I used to read his reviews pretty regularly. I disagreed with them a lot of the times, but I still enjoyed them.
Yeah, I probably would recommend this book to you then. Like if you just liked his writing and liked him in general.
I watched the documentary Life Itself, and that was
I watched
rough.
that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. That one.
Just seeing him in the later years of his life after he had his jaw removed. Rough.
Well, what's so interesting about the book too is that there's so much, and maybe the whole thing is because I think some of it's borrowed from writings he did for his website. Mm-hmm. They take some of that and turn it into like a chapter and add to it. But a lot of the book is written, after he lost his jaw and couldn't talk anymore. So like, it's like you're getting to hear the thoughts of like this guy who couldn't, when he wasn't able to talk. Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's
you
interesting.
get to, not many of us got to hear what he had to say. Yeah. It's very interesting reading it, thinking about that like this would be what you would experience like if you were to know Roger Ebert at that time, because he would just be writing everything. But yeah, so that is it for me. Chris, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I just, in between movies, I watched one of my favorite sitcoms right there along with Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Have either one of you guys seen Superstore ever?
No.
I've seen one episode of it.
Yeah, if you started in the first season, it gets better, just kind of like The Office did. The characters start to grow on you. But it is a sitcom starring America Ferrera and Ben Feldman. And as the characters grow on you, I really love this show. I think it's in its fourth or fifth season now. So yeah, I recommend it. But that's what I kind of filled in my time in between movies with. So How about you, Mike?
Yeah, so other than these movies, my girlfriend and I have been keeping up with Outlander. We have season 4 going on right now.
That's one I need to catch up on.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good. It continues to be good. I think they got a different DP this year and kind of like slashed some budget because I think like I can notice some filming declining in quality, you know? But they're also trying to fake Scotland for a different location. So it's to be understood. And mostly it's pretty good. I'd say it looks good like 95% of the time. But from a show that looked good 100% of the time, going to looking good 95% of the time.
Yeah.
It's
That's
noticeable.
on Stars, right?
Yeah, it's on Stars. They take pretty good care of their TV shows. It's already been renewed for season 5. It got renewed for season 4 and 5 at the same time. And it's adapting this ongoing book series. So if you guys like epic romances, or if you're not opposed to epic romances, give it a shot. I don't really know any other TV show quite like it. You know, it spans many, many years and many, many books. And it's the only TV show I can think of going on right now where I feel like because it has source material, more episodes would be better for the season. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
And they have 13 episode seasons, and even then it still feels like there is too little time to adequately tell the story. So that is probably the biggest compliment I can give it, is if at the end of a 13 episode season I want more, that's a good thing. So anyway, it's in the middle of season 4 right now. Many cliffhangers, lots of payoffs for the early part of the series. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Yeah, and you're very much on record as believing in the 10 episode season, or the less episodes per season is more.
Sometimes less than 10 is even better, right? So
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Exactly,
That is high praise in a way.
Yeah, you know what? If you guys ever watch Outlander, I would be interested to see what you guys think, because the way they did it is interesting. Book 1 is probably the shortest book of the series, and I haven't read all the books or anything. But book 1 is the shortest book, and it had a 16 episode first season. And then every other book after that has gotten longer, but the seasons have only been 13 episodes each.
Is it basically one book per season?
Yeah, they're keeping it pretty close to the 1-1 ratio. And man, I keep wanting them to explore more scenes more, you know what I mean? But they just they just move on after an episode. So yeah, high praise, I guess, if I want more episodes. But anyway, it's not a show for everybody. But if you like epic romance, like I said, or if you're open to epic romances, I say give Outlander a shot, because it's very unique. It's about a nurse that goes back in time from World War II.
Time travel.
Yeah, through some old stones in Scotland, and ends up in the 1700s and meets a strapping Highlander man named James Fraser. And adventure ensues.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's all I've got, really. It's going to be a long episode, so I say we wrap it up.
Yeah, I say so. So thank you guys for listening to this episode. And thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, our next episode will be the best of 2018, where we'll each be listing our top 10 movies, not 5. So that is going to be a big episode. I have a lot to watch and try to cram in there before for the next week. So also be on the lookout for our next Casually Criterion episode on Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, if you want to send us your best of 2018 list again, or if you want to send us questions and topics to talk about in regards to Mulholland Drive, you can send those to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, or of course our email at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Adios.